Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Steph and welcome to the 7 days of Bookmas. Today we are doing a series check-in. So we're going to be talking about all of the series that I have DNF'd, that I am moving forward with in 2024, and the ones that I would like to start in 2024. So we will start with the series that I'm DNFing, and some of these are very sad for me because I thought they would be 5-star series and they just didn't work out for whatever reason. And some of these I just should have known better. I just should have known better. So I will be DNFing the Graceling series. I don't even remember at this point how many books are in the series, but I can tell you that I was 3. Yeah, I think I read 3 and then I realized that the 4th one I needed to DNF it. And it's really not because I disliked it. I just was slowly losing interest. I was reading it with my Patreon. My patrons lost interest in the series, and so I just never really went back to it on my own. And I thought that at some point I would just end up finishing the series, and now I just have 0 interest in it. This one also hurts, and it's the Inheritance trilogy. I love N.K. Jemisin. I do. I loved the Broken Earth trilogy. I really enjoyed the Dreamblood duology, but the Inheritance trilogy, I got 1 book in and I absolutely knew that I did not care to move on with the rest of the series. So therefore I'm not going to move on, but it will probably still continue to live on my shelves with the hopes that one day I will change my mind about DNFing the series. Another one I'm really sad about is the Red Rising trilogy. I read the first 2 books in the Red Rising trilogy and I could not get past the writing style. There was just something about the writing that didn't work for me, but I had no desire to move on and I didn't really want to force myself through it. As we all know through the years of me being on BookTube, sci-fi is hit or miss for me, so this isn't surprising, but it is upsetting. At the end of last year, I read the first 2 books in the Master of Sorrows series. I was enjoying them fine enough. Like, the main character was pretty insufferable. The second book was definitely much stronger than the first book, but my problem with this series and the reason I don't want to move on, this is going to be like overall a 12-book series or something like that, where it follows our main character who at this point when we're meeting him is a young acolyte, and he's going to be moving into his villain origin story, and it's going to take place over years, and it's going to be like 2 quartets. So I just don't have any interest because I really don't like the main character as it is, and I'm sure it's going to be really fun to see a villain origin story because I love that idea, but I have no desire to watch it unfold with specifically this character. I would be interested in more from this author, but he's going to be spending the next couple of years writing about this character. So, but if you have any recommendations for books with a villain origin story, I would love to know those. I'm also DNFing the Atlas 6 series. I think it's a duology, but there's potentially more. I've heard that there's going to be a 3rd one. I read Atlas 6, thought it was fairly average. I had a good time when I read it, but it was like a 3.5 stars for me, and I have not heard the best reviews about the 2nd one. I will also be DNFing Iron Widow. I just didn't have fun with this book. I did not like the writing style at all, and I didn't gel with the characters really at all, and so I just don't feel like moving on with the rest of the series. I'm also falling out of love with YA generally, so a lot of YA series that I'm not clicking with immediately, I'm pretty much not going to move on with them. Another series I'm DNFing, which shouldn't be a shock to anybody, but it's a Children of Time duology. Is it a trilogy? Duology? I don't know. I think it's a duology. Either way, Erin and I were supposed to buddy read this, and her and I both could not deal with the spiders. So if you have arachnophobia, don't read this because it was not a good time. Which makes me very sad, but the good thing is that this author has written so many books, and I definitely want to try something else by him. I have another one of his books. He writes fantasy and he writes sci-fi, so I think the book that I own right now is a fantasy book. So I'm excited to try another one of his books, especially a fantasy. He's definitely very creative and made me feel so uncomfortable about the spiders, but I just don't, I can't do it. I'm also not going to be moving on with the Escaping Exodus series. I have not heard the best things about the 2nd book, and as a matter of fact, I tried to read the 2nd book right after I finished Escaping Exodus because I loved Escaping Exodus. I gave it like a 4.5 stars, and I was very excited to find a sci-fi author that worked for me, which I'm still excited about Nikki Drayden because they have a bunch of other series. Well, not a bunch. I think they have 2 other series, and I'm definitely going to be trying those series. But when I tried to read the 2nd book in the Escaping Exodus series, it just felt like a completely different series. I was very thrown off. I couldn't even explain to you what it was that was so different from the first and second book. It just felt completely different and I wasn't vibing with it, so I ended up DNFing it, and I don't feel like I'm going to come back to it anytime soon, but I'm definitely going to try other books by Nikki Drayden. I will also be DNFing A Fate of Flame and Ruin? Wrath and Flame? A Fate of Wrath and Flame. Why do all these titles have these names? This is K.A. Tucker's first attempt at fantasy romance, and it wasn't a bad time. It just was very mid for me. I had no real attachment to the two love interests, and that's a huge thing for me with fantasy romance, and like really any fantasy book. I have to have attachment to characters. I am first and foremost a character-driven reader, and then I love like world building and magic system and politics, but like characters really drive a story for me, because if your plot is really slow, at least I have the characters to hold on to, and I just didn't have much attachment to these characters, and I didn't have much investment in the relationship. Also going to be DNFing the Furyborn series, which might feel like it's out of left field, but I read Furyborn right when it came out and I loved it. I tabbed the crap out of that book. Like, I loved Furyborn. It was such a fun time. It's about angels and like fallen angels, and it was so interesting to me at the time. And then I tried to reread it and just couldn't get back into my reread, and then I've heard really not the best things about the rest of the books in the series. So at this point, it's more of like, I've just lost interest, and even though I loved the first one, I can just hold on to that love. I will also be DNFing The Girls of Paper and Fire. This one is definitely a case of I just lost interest. So I read the first two in the series and I loved the first two. Another series that I like tabbed the crap out of, but there was a big gap of time between the second one and the third one, and I just happened to lose a lot of interest in the series by the time the third one was published, and it was one of those things that I read the first two during the pandemic, and so I think it was one of those things of like, I needed it during the pandemic. I definitely don't feel like I'm missing out if I don't finish the series, but I'm glad that I read the first two and enjoyed them. So I am also DNFing The Wheel of Time. I've read the first four and the novella, and the novella was like the strongest book for me. Besides the first book, the novella was the strongest book for me. And I thought that I was gonna end up liking them more as I was going with the series, because all I've ever heard from the fandom is the further you get into the series, the better it gets. And I disagree, but that's just me. I will say that like the magic system was the most intriguing part of the series for me, and 4 books in, I feel like I still didn't understand where we were going with the magic system, like the importance of the magic system. Also, I just didn't care about the characters. Some of the women in here I absolutely love, but otherwise I couldn't really stand the majority of the characters in these books. So I don't need to move on. I don't need to know what happens in the Wheel of Time. I really don't. I will also be DNFing the Sleeping Giants trilogy. I read the first one. I don't have any desire to move on with the series. I know this is so many of my friends like favorites and they love it. And I will say that the audiobook experience is so fun. And if you are interested in the series, I would listen to the audiobook. I don't have any interest in this series. Like I said, sci-fi, very hit or miss for me. This one was just mid. So if it wasn't a glowing 5-star, I don't really have that much desire to move on with certain sci-fis because of that. And then sadly, this one really hurts me because I love the first book in the series. It's one of my favorite books, and that is the Upon a Burning Throne series. Problem with the series is that it was supposed to be a much longer series, and then because of publishing and sales, they ended up condensing it into a trilogy. So the final book is like a condensed version of a series that was supposed to be like 6 or 7 books long, and he had to end it at 3 books. So I just want to have the best feelings possible about the first book and let it be. I don't want to be disappointed, and I will forever love Upon a Burning Throne. I'm definitely going to look out for more by Ashot K. Banker, but I just don't think I need to finish this one. So firstly, I really would love to move on and finish The Poppy War. I started this in 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic. I loved the first one, and then I was just too depressed to try to move on with the rest of that series. So I'd love to resurrect my depression and go into the rest of The Poppy War. I really want to try to finish the Fireborn trilogy. I read Fireborn this year, really enjoyed it, and I would love to finish it. I also read earlier this year Ashes of the Sun. The trilogy has finally completed, so I would love love to read the second two. I think I would reread the first one because I don't remember as much as I would like about it, but it's kind of like a steampunky type of fantasy, so it felt really different and interesting. So I would love to finish out that trilogy. I think this one goes without saying. I would love to finish all of my unfinished series written by Sarah J. Maas. So I haven't read the Nesta book and I haven't read the second Crescent City book. I also would like to read the third one when that comes out in January. And obviously I'm in the midst of finishing Throne of Glass. I am about to start Kingdom of Ash. So I would really love to finish all of those because I've read so much of her work already, might as well just finish it off. I would also really love to finish the Blood Mercy series. It's technically not a finished series. I believe the last book comes out next year, but there are already like 7 or 8 books out in the series. So I would like to get as far as I possibly can before the last book comes out. And I love this vampire political fantasy romance, so I need to finish it. Leo and Cassia are everything to me. I would die for both of them if I'm honest. Like, if I'm really honest with you, I would. I also need to finish The Serpent and the Wings of Night duology. I have read the first book, the novella, and I was about to go into the last book, and then I don't know what happened. I didn't finish it, so I would really love to finish it and read Conquering the Vampire. What is it called? Slaying the Vampire. I'd really love to finish the Daughter of the Moon Goddess duology because I have been meaning to read The Heart of the Sun Warrior all year this year and I just haven't done it. I think I'm afraid I'm not gonna like it, but I'm gonna try. I'm also starting my Cosmere journey, so I would love to move on with Brandon Sanderson and start reading those in order, which I will be doing on Patreon. So I'm excited to see if I end up loving the Cosmere just as much as everyone else does. I have read random series in the Cosmere, but I've never read it in order. I also want to move on with Spy Family. I've been having so much fun reading the Spy Family volumes. I would love to catch up to whatever volume is out currently. The Black Sun trilogy wraps up in 2024, so I would love to finish that trilogy. I need to reread Black Sun and move on with the series, but I definitely want to try to finish that trilogy. I also really want to get back into the Singing Hills cycle. I've read the first 2 in this novella series and I would love to catch up to, I think there's 4 out right now and the 5th one comes out next year. I don't know how many more are going to be in here. I feel like they were picked up for like 2 or 3 more. I also need to move on with Gideon the Ninth. I just am so intimidated by Harrow that I haven't moved on, but I think I'm going to reread Gideon the Ninth this year and try to move on. I also really need to finish the Binti trilogy. I have the last book in that series left. I'll probably just reread them because they are novellas, so it would be easy to just reread them. But yeah, I loved the first 2 books in that series and I don't know why I haven't picked up the 3rd one, so I really need to finish it. And I really need to finish the Marrow Thieves series. The 2nd book came out. I think it's called Hunted by the Stars. And so I loved the Marrow Thieves. So I'm excited to see how I feel about Hunted by the Stars. The first series that I want to start in 2024 is The Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyons. I am so excited to start this series. I actually randomly started the audiobook for Ruin of Kings a few months ago because some of my patrons were reading it and they were like really hyping it up. Now at this point, they have finished the series and they continue to hype it up, but I did start the audiobook. I was loving it. I just had so many other things to read that I ended up not prioritizing it, but I'm going to be prioritizing it in 2024. I know this is some big talk, but it is the first series that I would like to finish in 2024 from start to finish. I would also like to start the Bitch Queen Chronicles. I've heard really great things from a lot of my friends, so I would love to start this series. I really need to read the Son of the Storm series. The 2nd book has already come out. It just came out this month. And this is another book that I started during a buddy read and I ended up not finishing it because I'm very notorious for doing that. And I just really want to prioritize it this year. I would really like to read The City of Dusk by Tara Sim. I've heard great things. I own it. The Unspoken Name, The Starless Crown, Jazmin Throne. This one I can't believe I haven't started because I loved Empire of Sand. So it's a crime that I haven't started the Jazmin Throne, but I'm going to prioritize it this year. Northern Wrath. This is like the Hanged Hanged Something trilogy. The third one finally just came out, so that would be awesome. If I do like it, I can marathon it. Daughter of the Forest. I have been meaning to get to that book also all 2023, and at one point I like had it on my TBR pile. I was ready to start it and then I just didn't. I feel like I'm going to absolutely love this series, but for some reason I just keep stopping myself from starting it. So I definitely want to try to start it in 2024. I really want to read One Dark Window and finish off that duology because the second book in that series just came out like this month or last month. I need to read The Final Strife. The second book is already out. I'm not sure if a third book is coming out anytime soon, but I need to start it. I need to start The Art of Prophecy. The second book also is already out. I've heard mixed things about it, so I'm interested to see where I land with this series. I also absolutely need to read The First Binding. It was one of my most anticipated releases of 2023, and I've started it 2 separate times, have enjoyed it each of the times that I've started it, but I just am so intimidated by this book. I also need to start The Will of the Many. Another book that's a crime that I haven't read is Malice by John Gwynne, because I have read The Shadow of the Gods and I love the 2 books that are out in that series, which I'm also anticipating the third book to come out in 2024, but I actually don't 100% know that it is. My camera so conveniently died. I think I was talking about Malice by John Gwynne and how it's a crime that I haven't started the series because I do love his other series, The Shadow of the Gods. So I definitely am going to be reading Malice in 2024. I also really want to start the Girl from the Other Side manga series. I just love the art style so much, and I feel like it's a series I'm absolutely gonna love, and I really hope so because the special editions are chef's kiss. I am so sure that I am missing a million things on these lists. Like, I actually looked over to my left and I saw that The Bone Shard Daughter, that trilogy, I want to finish that trilogy as well. So I knew that I was missing things, and I'm sure there are many more, but for now, these are the series that I'm DNFing, moving forward with, and I would love to start in 2024. I'm sure there will be a million more series that I end up starting in 2024 that were not on this list, but let me know down below if you've read any of these series, if you want to read any of these series, and if you've made it this far and you would love to leave an emoji, please leave a book stack emoji, and I will talk to y'all next time. Bye!